Hello and welcome to Your New Jersey. I'm Lisa Marie Falbo. Today, we're going one-on-one with rock star Constantine Maroulis. The New Jersey native went from American Idol to Broadway and is now starring in the original musical Rock and Roll Man. Here to tell us all about his amazing journey is Constantine. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. Wow, what an introduction. So good to see you, Lisa.
Oh, so good to see you. And I've been so fortunate to have gotten to know you over the years, work on some exciting television stuff together. And when I saw the press release a few months back that you were coming out with a new show, I was genuinely bursting for you because you're such a talent. You deserve all the success in the world. And this show rocks, as do you.
Well, wow, thank you. Yes, and I value our friendship and our working relationship over the years, and thank you always for the support. Stoked for you and your new gig. This is an awesome show. I love supporting anything New Jersey. You know, I was born in Brooklyn, but I grew up in New Jersey, and I'm living here again, raising my daughter here. So I love this show and how you highlight some great stuff in Jersey.
Well, we're going to get all into your new show, but let's take it back for our audience because even when I was preparing for this segment today, the whole office was buzzing. Constantine Maroulis, American Idol, that's so cool. I wish he was here live. But there was a story before Idol that started in New Jersey, like you said. Talk about growing up in the Garden State and how that influenced your musical career.
Absolutely. You know, I'm the youngest of three. My older brother and sister are they're much older than me actually. They don't like when I say that, but they are. And you know, they were almost out of the house when I was a kid. And so I was left to my own imagination. And you know, the few times that we would get together, the five of us, my parents, the three children, we would watch West Side Story. You could see the original poster on my wall behind me. We would watch Wizard of Oz. You know, I was quite young, at 5 years old. My brother is, 17, out of the house, whatnot, or going off to college. So those experiences, they really resonated with me. I had quite an imagination. I would put on shows and musicals in my room, from Jesus Christ Superstar to, The Music Man and West Side Story. I would sing all of Bon Jovi's records and tape myself doing it. So I guess those early connections with theater, cinema, music, they stayed with me, and it was all I ever wanted to do. I played trumpet. I grew up in the Bergen County suburb, Wyckoff, just a great town and an amazing support system for young artists and performing. Obviously, really challenging and for academics, but they had great teachers and great just guidance for me. And I had some wonderful, wonderful teachers along the way that steered me in the right direction.
So how did you make the leap from high school musicals and, getting involved in the Wyckoff local scene to the big time?
Well, I played in bands as well. You know, I was really into the Grateful Dead and Fish and that sort of traveling circus, that community, right? So we were all into those bands and a lot of other things as well. So I played in a band in high school called Lady Rain, and we all went off to have a lot of success in our own right down the road. I learned a lot playing in those bands and in the garages, building a following, sort of honing my skill as a front man in a band, but also auditioning in the city for professional theater. I was a little lost right after high school. Everyone went off to these big colleges, and I wanted to stay more local. It was just the dynamic I had with my family. So I went to school more part time at William Patterson, amazing music program there. Theater kids I got to meet. I was auditioning, did some community theaters, local stuff. And then I met Billy Porter, who's a huge superstar on Broadway. This is in the 90s, though. You know, he was well known, but not the superstar he is today. We were working on a show called Jesus Christ Superstar up in Nyack, and it was meant to come to Broadway. It was this amazing new production. And I met some Boston Conservatory, Berklee College of Music people there, and they're like, look, you're so talented, but you need a little honing, you need a little training. this is a great school for you. You should look into it. And I fell in love with the place. I fell in love with BOCO, as we call it, the Boston Conservatory. It merged with Berklee College of Music, where I was able to take great classes and train with the best and jam with the coolest musicians. So moving to Boston and not New York in, let's say, my early 20s, when kids were kind of coming home from school, let's say, was a great move for me. You know, they had a big showcase at the end. I could network with all these amazing people in Boston, which is a big town, but not quite New York, right? Hone my skill and just sort of put together a plan. You know, every summer I would do professional theater. I apprenticed at the Williamstown Theater Festival. It was a big deal for me. And I said I was going to book Rent. I'm going to showcase, get an agent, and I'm going to book Rent. And that's what's going to happen. That's the next 5 years of my life. And Rent, of course, was a huge show still. It was the Hamilton, let's say, of the late 90s and well into the early 2000s. Then my last year there, 9/11 happened. And that September, as I was entering my last year in the program, and I lost my first cousin, Constantine, actually, Gus, and everything changed. So I questioned everything like artists do. But then I realized this is what I do, and this is what he would want me to do, to create magic for people, a suspended belief, an escape, you know, in theater, in music, and it spurred me on even more so. So, and I did book Rent, and I traveled the world as the lead in Rent, Roger, and that sort of led me into the American Idol experience years later.
By the time you auditioned, it was already the big time show, right? We saw people like Kelly Clarkson go on to have megastar status. What was your goal? Was your goal to be the next Kelly, or just to use that as a vehicle to get your name out there?
Basically, I needed a gig. I needed a job. Rent was like, great work. Thanks for the couple of years. We're not renewing this cast. We're bringing in a new cast. And I was like, what? I had my band out on the road with me. Like they would like follow me around and we would play shows after Rent, and 50 Rent heads would show up. That was a good draw in Columbus, Ohio for an unknown band. So that was pretty cool. And then basically I needed a job. So I had been on open calls and whatnot. So we went, and an old girlfriend of mine took the Chinatown bus, $10. Feng Hua, I think they still are in operation, down to DC, and we waited it out. And I don't know, I think they saw something. They had the cameras on me right away. They're like, who is this guy with his long hair, his leather jacket? What's your story? And of course, that's when the actor kicks in. And I was at showbiz savvy, and I was like, well, I'm in this band, and I don't know, the band doesn't know I'm here. So then, boom, I had like my hook, I was in. And I played that. I played that sort of character up.
As you went through the weeks of Idol, I'm sure you got very close with the other contestants. Who else was on your season, and who are you still in touch with today?
Well, of course, Carrie Underwood won my season. She, I had been in the business. I was like, this girl's winning the show. There's no doubt. This is her show to lose. So I knew that. And then for me, it was like, go as far as I can and try to create some platform and longevity out of this, because it was also new. 30 million people a night were watching. I mean, yes, they had big seasons before, but it had arced up to this season where like they went tenfold with the production and the HD. I mean, if you look at the early seasons, it looks a little like they have like folding tables and like karaoke tracks. Now it's like 40 cameras, and the set was over the top, and it's an HD, and it's 3 nights a week. I mean, anyway, so Bo Bice was on my season. There were some great people. Von Zell Solomon, one of the most talented people I know. I've gotten to work with her since then, and Anthony Fedorov, and just a lot of great people. But I think it ultimately was kind of me and Carrie and Bo, and those were kind of like the ones that jumped out. Like they kind of pitted Bo and I against each other as the rockers, and the Southern rocker and the New York guy. And Carrie, of course, was just the epitome of what an American Idol is.
It's so amazing to me that Idol has been around for all these years, still on today. It spurred all of these spin-offs, yet it's those idols, like seasons 1, 2, 3, like those early years, those people are still out there. Everybody knows them. They're still household names. The other
Yes.
shows, and even the much later seasons of Idol, it doesn't have that sort of success. Why do you think that is?
I think the branding from day one was just immaculate. It was Ford, McDonald's, it was Coca-Cola. It just, the brand was synonymous with success. And I think in the early seasons, they also had this way of sort of telling the story that led up to like this transformation of a star. People were calling Idol like the Death Star of the television schedule. It's like, well, you can't put up anything against that. Not just tape it, I'll watch it later. Not I'll see the highlights on the morning shows or on Twitter, but I'm going to go home and watch it in real time. And that was the end of that. You had like the digital age sort of iTunes and whatnot sort of coming up, and then streaming and whatnot. So people just, our attention spans just got smaller and smaller. I think the other shows are really good. They're well done. They also maybe do too many. Like you can't have two voices in one year. You can't do two Dancing with the Stars in one year. It just gets a little played out. I think some of the other shows focus on like variety acts and stuff, and that's really fun. I think there's a reason why that's on in the summer. There's less viewership, and it's kind of like a novelty. But now Idol basically casts the show from TikTok and YouTube. They find people that are kind of with budding audiences or even established audiences and kind of pit them against each other. But it's one thing to do it at home and TikTok at home, and it's another to do it live on television. I still really enjoy the show. I haven't seen much of it this year yet. I usually now see it a little later down the road, and just see what people do with stuff. And I'm still very close to all the people there, and I've gotten to go back a few times to do some fun stuff with the contestants and promote Broadway shows and whatnot. So.
Well, thank you for that insider look, because it's a question that always comes to mind, like why not the success? But I agree with you. When it was 30 million people watching appointment television, that's when it was the ultimate. And unfortunately, the kids today will never get to know that. That makes us
And
sound
it's hard
old.
to really gauge. Yes, you're right. It's hard to gauge success. Like what is success, There's just like so many that just have this long growth that people aren't really necessarily a Constantine, or someone like that that's, maintained nearly 2 decades. 2 decades almost, of like relevance and a body of work and Tony nominations and whatnot. I'm not just speaking for myself. There are other people that have done a lot of cool stuff like that as well. So there's like the immediate ones that come to mind, and then the whole other, and then there's just levels of levels. It's like, how do you measure success, really?
Exactly. But what you did was you did not squander the opportunity. You had 30 million plus watching you, and you did not squander that. You realized, and maybe a lot of the others don't realize that they have that built-in audience, and now it's time to capitalize on that. So Idol ends. What was next for you?
I met Kelsey Grammer and his team at GramNet to develop a series kind of about my life. We ended up settling on this pilot called Brooklyn. We developed for some time sort of a big fat Greek wedding meets the King of Queens, and ABC bought the show. Didn't end up kind of coming together as things do. I did a record with the surviving members of Queen that they supported at Hollywood Records called Killer Queen, where they had all their favorite stars perform Queen songs. And I, of course, did Bohemian Rhapsody on the show. So that was really cool. Got to do all the late night shows with that, and just met a bunch of Broadway producers and record producers and whatnot. But it was that meeting I had with Rock of Ages, the original creatives, where they just came in all loosey goosey. Like, they make indie movies, they don't make musicals. They're like, they bring in this cassette and play it. They're like, this is it. It's a mixtape musical. It's a rock and roll 80s. That's the show, basically. And I was like, I am so in. This is amazing. So that early work on the show was huge. I wasn't a part of that, and they were developing it, but it wasn't what it became. I stayed in touch with them. I ended up going on to do The Wedding Singer on Broadway. I did some off-Broadway stuff. Jacques Brel, which was very highbrow. Jacques Brel is alive and well and living in Paris. Beautiful piece directed by Gordon Greenberg. And I was on the soap opera for a year, Bold and the Beautiful. I was going back and forth from LA to New York hosting, like you do. I was hosting a bunch of shows for American Idol stuff, pop culture stuff, TV Guide, Yahoo, MTV, and just all the while staying in touch with the Rock of Ages people. And they're like, we're coming to New York. We want you to be a part of it. And I have to admit, it was Kristen Henge, who was later Tony nominated for her work as our director, which still is, we had two female creatives, the choreographer and the director, on our team in a quite masculine type of show, right? Intentionally kind of winking at misogyny and all of this stuff that was part of the humor of the show and the genius. But she was like, no, you're not my Stacey Jacks. Stacey Jacks, of course, is the rock star in the show that the creatives all along were like, he's Stacey Jacks. No. You're my Drew. You're the vulnerable one. You're the quiet one. You're the wannabe. You're the guy that never does make it, but he finds love. And that's why we'll root for you. And it was a stroke of genius, to be honest, for me to not play the obvious part, to play the real lead, who's the sort of grounded, affable character in the show. And that was a winning formula for us. And of course, we went on to Broadway, dominated the Tonys, created an iconic brand all over the world. It's done in JCCs and middle schools and high schools. It's licensed all over the world. There was a huge movie with Tom Cruise. It's been surreal to see the growth of that brand in a decade plus, So, and I've gotten to do other shows since then and whatnot, but I think I'll always be synonymous with Rock of Ages until now.
Until now. Oh, great segue. Until right now. And you just had your opening a couple weeks ago. Talk about your new show. It's super exciting stuff.
Rock and Roll Man. It's been something I've been developing with the creatives over the last couple of years. Just so pleased to unleash this on the world. It's an origin of rock and roll story. Starts in the late 40s, centers around Alan Freed, who was the first rock and roll DJ who crossed the color lines during segregation and put his life quite seriously on the line to do so, to elevate these amazing Black artists at the time, like Little Richard, Laverne Baker, Chuck Berry. And he was quite a rebel, quite a disruptor, a flawed man as well, led a complicated life, and ultimately drank himself to death by his mid-40s. And he was alone and nearly forgotten. What he did was pivotal to what rock and roll became. He coined the phrase rock and roll. It was just rhythm and blues. He put on tours, huge movies that he produced and starred in, long before Dick Clark or later Ryan Seacrest and whatnot. There was Alan Freed and the Rock and Roll Dance Party. So our show is not your typical catalog or jukebox musical. We have original music in it as well as all the great songs that you're familiar with. Tutti Frutti, Great Balls of Fire, Life Could Be a Dream, all the amazing songs from that era of the 50s. But it's the story that you don't know about the origin of rock and roll, and that is Rock and Roll Man.
What was your involvement? Because I mean, I feel like you're so seasoned now. I'm sure you had some behind the scenes producing cred as well going into this.
You know me well. Okay, so look, I've had opportunities to go into long running shows, tours. It doesn't interest me as much as creating something from the ground up, creating an original lead. We're in my old theater, not just at New World Stages, this amazing facility that has great stuff all over the building, but we're in my actual space that I started Rock of Ages in many, many moons ago, about 15 years ago, at New World Stages, stage two. It's a 499 seat theater, and we're building something great. We're hoping to transfer this to Broadway next year. I think there's a great place for this. Certainly, I've been there all along with a lot of um, the growth of the show, and I've done some producing in the past, and we just this is a huge collaboration between Rose, our amazing producer, lead producer, um, Gary, our writer, and all the guys for sure. Randy, our director, Stephanie Clemens from Hamilton fame as our choreographer, just some amazing people involved, and what a cast. So it's not a cookie cutter musical. It's dark. It actually, we begin the show at the end of his life,
Hmm.
when he's alone, and it's over, basically. And that, so I connected with that because we've all had those moments where, like, is this my last gig? Is there going to be another show, another tour? Do I have to pivot into something else? And I've had my own struggles with personal stuff, and certainly with drinking and using and such. And I've been clean, geez, it's going to be 4 years. So I'm excited to unleash this show on the world, and I hope that people will come. I mean, it's definitely, there's nothing like it on Broadway right now, so we're having a great time, and this cast is unbelievable.
You and I really connected over COVID. So when you just said, is this going to be my last gig? Should I think of
Yeah.
something else? When you and I came together, you were in that place. We didn't know when things were going to open up. You had a lot of irons in the fire, 2019, 2020, and then all of a sudden everything stopped. So I'm sure you drew on that experience as well.
For sure, for sure. And I'm a born hustler, for sure. I'm not, even when I have a lot of success at a moment in my life, I'm always trying to do other things, not so much for fame or for a payoff or a payout. Payoff, that's a Freudian slip because there's a little payola involved in our show Rock and Roll Man. That's part of the scandal that Hoover was after Alan Freed for. But for me, yeah, just always trying to stay active, take care of myself. I put out a record over the pandemic called Until I'm Wanted, which sort of was my motto. And it did really well. And I did some dates when things opened up to support the record and the songs, available everywhere. Streaming uh, is, which is everywhere, Apple Music and Spotify and whatnot. I think you'll really dig the last record. But we're already working on my new one. I have a song, Daydream, that's out, and we're super excited about that. All of those things you can find at ConstantineMaroulis.com. And for sure, we pivot, we circled the wagons. I took care of my family. I lost my very dear friend Nick, as you know, over the pandemic. And, we still just think about him every day. We have this long running thread, I think I mentioned to you way back, of all the boys that were just attached to Nick's life through Rock of Ages and all things adjacent. And every day we still keep it going. We still talk about him and the experiences and, new things that are happening. And it's been this very therapeutic thing. I think straight men are, there's a stigma like to not be vulnerable and allow themselves to be, affected by things. And it's okay. You can, I don't know. I think I might be a pretty cool guy to maybe, you know, compare or connect to. I think if I can leave myself vulnerable to like all these other, kind of, I don't know, masculine dudes and whatnot, then you can too. I think we all need to talk to someone and be open to getting better every day.
Well, Constantine, congratulations on all of your success, hard work. That's the Jersey in you. That's the Greek in you, for sure. And best of luck. Rock and Roll Man, where can we get tickets?
Yeah, rockandrollmanmusical.com, on sale right now. New World stages, 8 shows a week. We're rocking and rolling. And the plan is to run the show through the end of the year.
Constantine, this was really fun to do the whole show with you today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you for having me. And we'll see you soon. Have a great summer.
Yes, you too. That just about does it for your New Jersey. I'm Lisa Marie Falbo. We'll see you back here next week.